One of my favorite quotes is by artist Chuck Close. Inspiration is for amateurs, the rest of us just show up and get to work. It's simply a reminder to get working and to get making. But it can be really difficult to get started. I mean, how many times have you sat down in front of a blank paper or opened up your journal and simply felt overwhelmed by the blankness of the page? There's just something about that blank page. Maybe because it's so pristine and perfect, and it can be a struggle to even get started. That's when I like to turn to some tried and true materials and techniques that can have me going in really no time at all. And watercolor is one of those materials. Now, there are a ton of videos and books out there with lots of watercolor techniques, but I find that there are really three that I use about 99% of the time. So these are my go-to water techniques that I use a lot in my own visual journal and in my own mixed media work. And I can get started in a matter of seconds without much fuss and bother. So here they are: scrubbing, splattering, and stenciling. Scrubbing. This really is that traditional wet on dry technique. But my goal isn't to get an even solid color. It's just to get some color down as quickly as I can. I load a big stiff bristle brush with a light value color, so I use lots of water and a little bit of pigment, and with that light color I can easily build on top of it later as it dries. I can add more color and more materials to it. So after loading the brush with paint, I simply scrub the brush so that I get a variety of marks and values on the page. Also, I leave some blank areas so that way the page isn't completely filled in. If I want a bit of variety, I add in another color or two as I work, and the colors will bleed and blend together. So my goal is just to get a background going that has a bit of texture and variety. I'm not painting a picture, I'm not trying to be neat and clean about it. So focusing on a background gives me a good base to build off of later. Splattering. Now, I love inviting in a bit of randomness and chance into my work, and splattering is a great way to do just that. Besides, it adds a lot of great texture to my pages. Now, I don't go crazy flinging paint all over the place. I'm a bit more intentional as I splatter. So I use a stiff bristle brush again, and I use my finger to pull back on the bristles to let the paint splatter onto the page. So I angle the brush toward the paper, and I pull back toward my nose, and the bristles snap forward and splatter the page. Now, having a lot of water in the brush results in bigger, juicier drops. Having less water makes for a drier brush and results in a finer spray of paint. Now, splattering into wet paint can give some really interesting bleeding. So you can let the paint splatters dry, or you can drag a scraper or a brush through the splatters, give you different effects and textures. So experiment and have fun with your splattering. Stenciling. Stencils are not something everyone thinks of for watercolor paint, just simply because it's so watery. You're just not going to get clean and smooth shapes and letters. The paint is going to run and bleed under the stencil. It's just going to happen. But I love that, especially for creating backgrounds. So use any kind of plastic stencil, not one made from paper or cardboard. They're just going to get soaked and probably eventually fall apart. I like to use the thin plastic stencils, and letters and shapes are both great to use for this. I load up the brush, position the stencil where I want it, and simply paint over the stencil. Now, if there's a lot of water in my brush, the paint is going to run and bleed under the stencil, and it's just going to cause a bit of a mess. But like I said, I really love that. I love that unpredictability of it. Sometimes I'll try using a little less water, that way I don't get so much bleeding. Now, besides store-bought stencils, I like to use found stencils as well. These are things that weren't expressly made for stenciling, but work great for it. Things like plastic mesh and punchinella are some of my favorites. For plastic mesh, I use the plastic canvas that you can buy at any arts and crafts store. My grandmother used to stitch yarn through it and make all sorts of stuff from it. Now, if you're not familiar with punchinella, it's basically what's left over after they make sequins. And it results in strips of plastic with a series of holes in it. Now, punchinella used to be very easy to find, especially when mixed media first became popular like 20 years ago. But now it can be pretty hard to find. I was lucky that someone gave me some about 20 years ago, and I'm still using it. But check Etsy or even eBay. Sometimes you can find it in arts and crafts store because they sell it as a ribbon, so it might be worth checking out your local shops. No matter what you use for stenciling, it can be a quick and easy way to get some texture and pattern onto the page. Bonus. Okay, it's bonus time. So I want to share a quick and easy bonus technique with you that can help you achieve some rich textured pages. So think about layering. By simply letting the paint dry and then doing something on top of it, you can build up layers of colors and layers of textures. So what if you started with a single color and just scrubbed in a quick rough layer? Now you let it dry or use a hair dryer to dry it, and then maybe add some splattering on top of it. Let that dry and then maybe scrub another color on top of it. Let it dry and then how about some stenciling? And very quickly you can have 4 or 5 or 6 different layers going on that page. So layering can give you all sorts of interesting backgrounds. So there you have it, my 3 go-to watercolor techniques plus the bonus for getting going with a journal page or a mixed media piece of art. So the next time you're staring at that blank page and you don't know where to start, try grabbing some watercolor paint and try scrubbing, splattering, and stenciling to get yourself going and making. And don't forget that you can always layer all those techniques together to get some really rich textured backgrounds. As you work, you may find that other ideas will pop into your mind, so feel free to follow those and carry those forward. Or you may just begin a bunch of pages with no idea what's going to happen to them. Of course, these techniques can easily be added to pages where you've already started some things as well. So don't be afraid to add these techniques to your things of go-tos. I hope that you got something useful from this video, and if you did, hit that like button. And if you want more of this type of thing, make sure you subscribe, and please think about sharing this video with your friends who might like it too. So until next time, happy creating.